Alrighty, we got the final dump of cards for Legends of the Force. FFG spoiled the rest of the set due to some leaks that happened, and because of this, and to level the competitive field going into the Galactic Championships, they decided to just release the whole set early. So got over 100 cards, I believe, kind of dumped all at once. The remaining leaders, of which I will cover in this video. And yeah, it's a lot of exciting stuff to talk about. A ton of new legendaries to go over, bunch of cards. So let's check them out. But before we do, please hit that subscribe button. And if you're interested in some more content from me, which does include now some early spoiler season testing for set 5, do check out my Patreon as well. All right, so yeah, final card dump. I'll start with the leaders. There's 5 that I'm going to cover. One that was released before this dump that just happened on Friday, and then the other 4. So we'll get through the 5 leaders, and then the card review. I'm gonna review all the legendaries and then highlights from this final dump. I am not going to review all 100 plus cards. I'm certain I will miss a few that may be interesting or may be competitive. I tried to pick the ones that I thought deserved the most airtime, so to speak, and we'll try to get through as many of them as possible. So let's get to the leaders. We got Kylo Ren here. He is a 7-flip villainous blue leader. He has a frontside action that discards a card from his hand. If you discard an upgrade this way, draw a card. So a little reminiscent of Yoda's ability, where you can kind of like filter your hand. Here it's only with you only get to replace the card if you discard an upgrade. So of course you can use this ability to like enable something like Palp's Return. But if you are discarding units, you are not going to draw a card. So you are going to be a little down in the card economy. He flips on 7. Again, that's very late in this game. He's a 5/5 Sentinel that says when deployed, play any number of upgrades from your discard pile on this unit. And you have to pay their cost, right? So it's not for free. So he does flip, and you know, you've maybe stacked some good upgrades in your discard pile, and you can create like a massive Sentinel. You can put things on this that like let him attack immediately, like snapshot reflexes. There's a new removal upgrade in Villain Green that's like overwhelming barrage light. You could do that, and then he like gets upgraded and kills something. You can give him things, of course, that would bump his health way up, so he's not removable. Shadowed Intentions is an upgrade that makes him not be able to be defeated by defeat effects. So all kinds of like weird things you can do with him as you've set up your discard pile. Look, I think this is a very interesting build around. I do think it's probably not going to get there simply because of the fact that he's such an expensive leader, and his action is also just not particularly useful when it comes to like mitigating damage to your base early. It's not a board affecting ability. He is very all in on sort of this like make a giant Kylo when he flips, and hopefully that's good enough. And you know, it might be sometimes. There's a lot of silver bullets to a strategy like this too, though, just like going tall with one unit. But I will say he is much more interesting than a lot of other leaders we got in this set. I think it's certainly worth kind of exploring what you can do with this guy. The next new leader is Barriss, and this is a cunning villainy leader. It's a 6 deploy. She has a frontside action that uses the Force token. Then you can play an event from your hand, and it costs 1 less. So you're basically using the Force token to discount events, right? She flips into a 4/7 that has the same action, right? It's not an attack action. It's just action. Use the Force, play an event from your hand. It costs 1 less. So what are the best events to kind of do this with 1-cost events? Honestly, like the best reduction you can get is from 1 to 0. That's an 100% cost reduction. And there are some cool ones, namely like Shien Flurry and Timely Intervention. The ambush granting events are pretty cool with her, because now you can just use, now you can play your unit at cost by doing this. So that's pretty cool. Force Throw, of course, is a card that costs 1. You know, you can sometimes squeeze in events that you otherwise wouldn't later in turns, right? If you have like a 4 or 5, 6 cost event, whatever it is, and you can discount it 1, you play it a turn earlier sometimes. The mechanic is a little clunky, of course, because you need to enable this with forced units. So this still will have to be like a board centric sort of leader because for the most part, the force stuff requires units, right? There is like the green base that gives you 3 charges of force. Maybe that's worth it with Barriss. You basically get 3 shots at a 1 cost discount throughout the game. She's a little weak on the deploy, right? Like 6 cost 4/7 is just not good. It's not a good stat line. And she doesn't get a buffed version of this ability when she deploys, so there's nothing super exciting going on once you get her on the board. Overall, kind of in the middle ranges for me on the leader. I don't think this will be like a tier 1 sort of leader, but there's some interesting build around mechanics here. All right, next is Cal Kestis. This is the Cunning Heroism leader, and it's a 4 deploy, so I think it's the only 4 deploy in this set. He has an action, use the force token. An opponent chooses a ready unit they control and exhaust that unit, so I don't love that ability. Like, if you could just use the force to exhaust a unit, it would certainly be a lot better and maybe interesting. I think the fact that they get to choose is not great. Like, it's still a lot to pay for this effect, right? And you don't get any agency in what's happening unless your opponent only has 1 unit, and then you get to choose, basically. His deploy is a 4, so 4 is good, but 3/4 stat line, I don't like 4 health. This is a pretty weak deploy, in my opinion. He gets the same ability on his attack now, so it doesn't use the force token, but they choose a ready unit they control and exhaust it. I mean, I'm really unimpressed by this leader, to be honest. I don't think there's any chance that this is like gonna usurp Sabine as like the premier 4-cost flip aggro leader. It's just not a particularly exciting one to me. All right, next one is the Command Villainous Supreme Leader Snoke. Honestly, another one that I'm not super inspired by. He has an action that costs 1 to give an experience token to a unit with the most power among friendly units. So it's a spin on the Tarkin ability from set 1. It costs 1, you get an experience. Here, instead of Imperial being the restriction, it just goes on your biggest unit. If you have multiple units with the same power, you get to choose. So, cool. He flips into a 4/7 for 6. So once again, I'll love the stat line. And then he gets the ability on attack now. So notably, he can buff himself. If he's the biggest unit you have in play, he will attack into a 5/8, which is fine. Like, this isn't bad, but it's also like not particularly interesting. Is it better than Tarkin? Maybe, maybe not. Like, probably not, because he flips on 6 instead of 5. There's so many versions of this leader, whether they're in heroism or villainy, just like the pay 1 to give an experience with some spin on it. I don't find this interesting mechanically, and I don't think it's particularly powerful because, I mean, we've seen what it takes for this mechanic to be really powerful, and like Rey has been the only one that has really gotten there, and that's for very specific reasons associated with her. And she also is like, the restore 3 on her is also just like a much more relevant thing than what's happening with like Supreme Leader Snoke when he flips. It's fine. Like, it's all it is fine. But oh boy, is it better than this. Rey, the 7 flip aggression heroism version. Fantastic artwork, by the way. I wish this leader was good. It's not. Action: if you played a non-unit force card this phase, deal 1 damage to a unit. So it's a pinging leader, but the restriction here is incredibly narrow. So non-unit force card, I mean, force throw is very good, but if you go sort by force trait on events and upgrades, right, non-unit, it's just not that plentiful, and most of the cards are not very good. So sure, like, you get some incidental +1 value out of some of the force cards you run in your deck. How many of them can you possibly run in your deck? I don't know. Maybe you can get into the double digits if you try really, really hard. And this ability is a fine payoff for that, but honestly, nothing incredibly game-breaking. But the real, like, that's the better half of this leader is the action here. Like, it's not terrible. And certainly if her deploy was relevant, this ability would be better. But Rey on deploy is a 7, cost 6/8. Fine stats, I guess, but it's like 7. And then it says, when deployed, you may discard your hand. If you do, draw 2 cards. I'm not sure, like, this doesn't help you stabilize. It doesn't really help you do anything. It might not even draw you any cards because it's not that often you have no cards in your hand. Like, if this just said when deploy, draw 2 cards, I still don't think it would be any good. But, like, it also makes you discard your hand. So, like, how much are you actually netting from this deploy? It's not helping you. Like, think about like other 7s that when they deploy, like Yoda, for instance, kills a unit. Mace Windu, 2 damage across the board. Lando, Giant Sentinel, even like the Kylo we just talked about, Giant Sentinel. Chewbacca, Giant Sentinel. Like, what do all these leaders have in common? They make it so that maybe you won't die the instant you deploy. And in fact, none of those leaders are particularly top tier anyway because they cost 7 and they do have a pretty relevant when deploy. Rey, just 0 board impact when she flips. Yeah, this is not great. All right, and the last new leader we got is Anakin Skywalker, and he's heroism without any colored aspect. So kind of the counterpart to the Darth Revan. Has an action, use the Force, lose your Force token, right? Play a villainous non-unit card from your hand, ignoring its aspect penalties. So you can play events and upgrades from villainy in this deck. And they don't have to match the base aspect either, right? Like, you can be playing an Anakin blue deck and you can play red villainous events and it just ignores all its aspect penalties. So you don't have to pay any tax on it. So it's pretty cool, right? Is it crazy powerful? Well, we'll find out. He flips into a 5-cost 4/6, so that's a solid stat line, and then he has the same action, right? It's not on attack, it's just use the Force, play a villainous non-unit card. I wish it didn't use the Force when he flipped so that you can kind of do this twice in one turn sometimes. You still can, it's just more difficult now. The cost is quite steep, actually, especially in a deck that's only going to have one aspect. So blue, I think, mostly makes the most sense if I'm thinking about it, because one of the major draws to this like villainous heroism mix is to play the Anakin Legendary that we got in this set that gives you -3/-3, 2 triggers, one if you have heroism cards in your discard, and 1 trigger if you have villainous cards in your discard. So like the first place I would look is just to try to maximize that card. So you're in blue, okay, and now we have to think about how do we generate this Force token, and we need a powerful Force curve. Unfortunately, if any of you have already started brewing decks in general, you will notice that even with 2 color combos, sometimes it's pretty difficult to like play a solid unit curve where everything is Force. It's some color combos have it better, but like certainly a monocolored combo with like blue it's gonna be kind of soft, right? Like your turn 1 play, yeah, you get like Yaddle, that's pretty good. You get the a card we'll talk about later, Secret Sage, pretty good. After that, mostly not good. Then you have to go to like the 3 resource turn. You get Ezra and Yoda if you're playing in blue. Not much else after that. Like, not powerful, right? There are a few others. You just kind of have to go down in your power level. So to maintain this Force token, it's going to be more difficult because you're playing weaker units overall in this deck. And what is your reward? The first thing everyone will tell you is Overwhelming Barrage, and that is probably true. You get to play Overwhelming Barrage in your hero deck. You have a good leader to enable it because he's a 4/6, so you can flip him, Barrage, you get that magic 6 damage Barrage. Past that, there's like other powerful villainous events, like Power of the Dark Side's a good one. You can play like Force Lightning in this deck with Anakin. Like, there's certainly no shortage of like some stuff you might want to include, right? No Good to Me Dead is another really powerful event. It's just, is it worth it when you can play Overwhelming Barrage or whatever in your villainous green deck? Like, do you need to play Anakin for that? I think when I look at this, this is first impression. I just think it's going to end up falling short because the aspect penalty on this is pretty massive, because specifically this has to be a Force deck. And because it has to be a Force deck, you're just going to be coming short on a powerful Force unit curve. It's just not really possible to have a bunch of good Force units if you're playing a single color deck. And the payoff doesn't feel crazy enough for me at first glance. Like we said, there's some events you can splash in this deck, but like how many are you actually going to splash, and how big a deal is it actually to splash them? Like, why can't we just play a 2-color deck and play good events in those 2 colors? Like, why do we have to splash these events? Like, the only one, the crazy broken one, is Overwhelming Barrage. But once we get past that, it's just fine stuff. It's nothing completely game breaking after that. So this is very cool. It is a good way to enable the Anakin unit, like I mentioned, and that's maybe the biggest draw for this whole strategy. Will this morph into some like tier 1 menace? I would bet no, but you know, this can also continue to get better as more and more cards come out, and there's more reasons to splash things, and more importantly, more ways to get this force token consistently. And you know, one other thing you can think about is, instead of using like the force curve, you can try to play this with a base that just gives you the force. Like the red one, for instance, whenever you deal 3 damage, you can maybe look at that and like morph this into a little more of an aggro build, and then you just ignore the force trait. The green one just gives you 3 charges, so like at that point you can't play that many villainous events, but like you play your 3 Overwhelming Barrages and then a few others, and like you just know that you have 3 charges in the game to splash an event. You know, the cunning one, of course, you can just exhaust your own units to get the force token. So there are ways around the requirement of like a force curve here. Even the blue one, right? With you just play a bunch of units with 4 health. So like maybe that's the better way to go. As I'm talking this out loud, you know that I'm doing this kind of off the cuff, and I'm like brainstorming while I'm talking to you, but maybe one of those bases is actually the way to go because of how difficult it may be to maintain a force curve with Anakin, and just using the 25 health base might be better. So we'll definitely check this one out, just because this is pretty interesting and it kind of like scratches a creative itch. I just want to like be a little like calm. Let's not like get overhyped about the fact that we can play Overwhelming Barrage in a hero deck. Like you can play Overwhelming Barrage in villain decks. Like you don't have to go through all these hoops to play that card. You can just play it in good decks with villains. All right, let's get into the legendaries now. So Always 2 is a really cool one. I don't think it'll be super meta defining, but you know, you choose 2 friendly Sith units and you give them both 2 shields and 2 experience, and you defeat all your other units. So, of course, you're not going to play this if you have, like, non-Sith units in play. I think the idea here would be, like, you find a Sith leader you can run with this, and then, like, a few Sith units, and then, like, maybe you can, like, get them both really buffed. Because, of course, like, double shield, double experience on both is pretty cool. It's just incredibly narrow is the problem. So it's, like, probably not going to be good enough, but it's a pretty cool legendary and a pretty interesting build around. Supremacy goes with the theme of giant green ships. It's a 12 cost. It's a 12/12. It has ambush, and it gives all your other vehicles +6/+6. Unfortunately, it doesn't have Sentinel or Overwhelm, so you're probably just dead the moment you play this for 12. It's not better than like the other big staple capital ships that like controlling decks will play, like Devastator, Annihilator, Avenger. Like those cards are all way better than Supremacy. One little niche use case I can think about this is in actually like an aggressive space deck where you have or not just space vehicle, mostly it's space, but a deck with a lot of like token vehicles, and you can play this with Galactic Ambition, which is the card from set 1. You pay 7 for it. You take 12 damage to your base, but the idea is you're just trying to kill your opponent that turn because it does buff every unit you have +6/+6. If this is like Unity of Purpose on steroids, right? If you have like 3 TIE fighters, you can hit for like +18 damage that turn, right? So it can come down, it ambushes something, and then like your whole team just kills your opponent that turn. So that's like one like use case I can think about here. Otherwise, this card is complete useless. Like if you're gonna play this fair, there's just no reason you would ever play this over Devastator, Annihilator, and like the better capital ships that actually help stabilize your board more. All right, Leia Organa, 5 cost command heroism. It's a 5/5 space unit, so she flies. And while this unit is in the space arena, she can't ready. So she's never going to ready up in space, but she has the action while she's in space that uses the force, moves her to the ground, and gives all your friendly heroism unit +2/+2 this phase. Okay. It is like a pretty high upside effect, right? You can play her, immediately use the force, bring her to the ground, and then buff the whole board. Of course, she won't be able to attack that turn unless you've played her from your hand ready with something like Sneak Attack. And that does work because although she can't ready, Sneak Attack says she comes into play ready. So it does kind of get through that effect. There's just so much that you kind of have to do with this to even make it go off, right? You need the force, right? So that is the first thing. You need a board with like a few units at least, but for this buff to actually matter. And then you need like a lot of actions, right? You need to play her, then you need to use the action to move her to the ground. Then you can finally start attacking with your units. Now, if they have like 2 sequences, 2 actions, maybe 3 before you actually start hammering them, I think this isn't going to make the cut. Like, honestly, it's like a very high ceiling effect, but the floor is abysmal because it's like a 5/5 that doesn't ready, right? That's like awful, first of all. And there's just so many places during this whole line that it can fall apart. The sneak attack interaction is pretty cool because at least there, like, she comes in ready. Even if you don't have the force token, you can attack with her, get the force token, and then bring her to the ground. Of course, she'll die at the end of the turn, but like maybe you can push a bunch of damage that way. Otherwise, I think just a very cool thematic card with like a high power ceiling, but probably just way too clunky in most scenarios. All right, Yoda, he is not so clunky. He is another command heroism legendary, and he's a 5/9. When you play him, you can use the force, you heal 5 from your base when you do, and then he also says when you use the force, you may deal damage to a unit equal to twice the number of units you control. So if he's the only unit you play, that's only going to deal 2. But if there's 2 units in play, including him, that's 4. It really does scale up pretty quickly from there. Like, even 4 might be enough to just kill a unit. 6 and more, you're killing really relevant threats. And yeah, the heal 5 is really nice on like a big 8-drop, right? And, you know, I'm going to say this with a lot of different cards, but Han 2 really loves these kinds of units that just like, it doesn't matter if they come in with 2 damage on them, right? Like, there's no difference if this is a 5/9 or a 5/7 for the most part. Like, of course it matters, but not like a ton when you're talking about these bombs. But playing them for a resource less is absolutely massive. So that's like one like very clean place where I would look, like a Han Green force deck. But honestly, you can play this with Obi-Wan force deck. You can find other, like Rey can try to play as a force deck. Now, the force deck in general does require a pretty heavy deck concession. You need a bunch of force units so that you can enable your force consistently. But this is a huge payoff for doing that. And like, now Hero Green has just like insane top end with this and Home 1. And then you also have the new Kelleran Beck. Like, this is going to be very difficult to grind through the amount of like threat density. And Yoda's just another piece to that puzzle. Like, it doesn't matter if he's like better or worse than Home 1 because now you just get to play both of them, right? Like, there's just more of this going on. And, you know, his ability is also repeatable. It just says when you use the force. So like, if he sticks, like, you just win. Like, if he's not removed and you have like a board and you can just like get the force back again and then like use it with something and then Yoda shoots another unit. Yeah, this is like probably one of the better legendaries in this set. Certainly, I think deserves the legendary status on it, unlike a lot of the cards we're going to see. But yeah, really cool. All right, here's Oppo Rancisis. I don't know if I pronounced that right. This is a 3-cost 3/5, so, you know, good stat line. Unfortunately, he's in double command, so that's like, all right, I guess. He has a bunch of words on him that basically say he gets every keyword of every unit you have in play. So like, cool, right? He actually doubles the raid and restore. So like, if any unit you have in play has restore, he gets restore too, and same with raid. The rest, you just get the ability, and that's pretty cool. Like, I think this guy would be really cool to play if he wasn't in double green. It's just like, In double green, you've really narrowed where to play a leader like this. Double green is not a very supported archetype in general. This, of course, is very, very good if you can put it in your deck, which is not that many decks, because the floor is incredibly high. It's just a 3/5 Force Jedi for 3. So that's like already something a lot of decks would play even without all the keyword stuff. So a cool card, just a very narrow one. Here's Grand Inquisitor, probably another one of the better legendaries that we got in this set. And he is a 3-cost Villainous Aggression. He's a 3/4 hidden raid 1. He also says other friendly Inquisitor units gain hidden. I think that's, other than a few scenarios, mostly flavor text. But, you know, because he's a Force unit and he comes in invisible, he's mostly going to be able to attack, which means you're mostly going to be able to get that Force token if you're playing this in any sort of Force deck. And he hits for 4, which is great. Like, not a lot of 3-cost units hit for 4, especially when they also have 4 health. Like, there are the 4/4s, but he is much safer to play because of that hidden. And he also has the Force trait, which is incredibly important in this set. You know, I really like the Grand Inquisitor leader from set 1, and this guy works really well with that leader. In the end, that leader probably won't quite cut it just because his deploy is too late and his stats are too poor. But the fact that you can play this on Grand Inquisitor's flip turn, and then when you flip Grand Inquisitor, he will be hidden, is a really, really nifty interaction, because this guy's hidden, your leader will be hidden. You can really push a ton of like unpreventable damage that way, as long as like your opponent doesn't just have like hard removal for these units, right? So that is like a really neat interaction. It makes his deploy much safer because your leader will come in hidden. And you know, overall, I think this card will see a decent amount of play just as like a good 3-drop Force unit. It's like way better than Fifth Brother, which is a card I was like begrudgingly thinking I would have to put in some of these like red Villainous Force decks, because there just wasn't enough in the 3-drop slot. But Grand Inquisitor is a huge upgrade in that slot for a lot of decks trying to play a strategy like that. All right, Sindralig is an 8-cost Heroism Aggression. He's a 5/6. Says when played, you may play a lightsaber upgrade from your hand for free on this unit. If you do ready him, like, sure. I mean, I don't think it's very good. If you can play him, you play like a big lightsaber on him. If you have one in your hand, you've now played 8 for like an 8/9 readied unit, which is like cool, right? Like, if that's always if this was just an 8-cost 8/9 that comes into play ready, it would be decent. It's just not always that. The floor is abysmal, because if you don't have a lightsaber in your hand, this card is absolute nonsense. And then even when you do, because you're 2-for-1ing yourself, right? You have to play the lightsaber. You're setting yourself up for like getting 2-for-1 by removal or something. And then like, or a Sentinel just blocking this. Overall, not very impressed with this. Bendu is just another big giant thing. It's an 8-cost aggression, 10/10 unit. Says on attack, deal 3 damage to each other unit. Sure, I mean, you can play it as a 10/8 in Han 2 for 7, which is better. It's like another, what I was talking about, like how the health kind of is irrelevant after a certain point. But, you know, I think there's just way better things to do at 8 in most decks. The Father, 8-cost neutral legendary, is a 5/10 that says when you use the Force, you may deal 1 damage to this unit if you do the Forces with you. So he just like rebuys the Force. This card's terrible. Don't play this. All right, Zuckuss is a 5-cost double cunning unit. He's a Force bounty hunter. He's a 4/7. He says on attack, name a card, then discard the top card of the defending player's deck. If a card with that name is discarded, this unit gets +4/+0 for this attack. So like, the only place I can think where this like works is with the Thrawn from set 1, where you just always know what's on top of your opponent's deck. And that's cool. Like, I mean, it's still incredibly slow. It's a 5-cost do nothing 4/7, but then you get to attack for 8 next turn. That's pretty nifty. I mean, this card isn't any good. It's like it's pretty bad, but yeah, Thrawn, I guess. All right, here is the non-legendary pile. So the first one we got is Calm in the Storm, 2-cost Vigilance Heroism. Says exhaust a friendly unit if you do give a shield token and 2 experience tokens to it. It's like interesting, especially on like sentinels that you probably weren't planning on attacking with anyway, because 2 costs for 2 experience in a shield is pretty nice. I don't think this is going to be fantastic because it's just, once again, it's like, it's essentially playing an upgrade on a unit. And although this is much better against like upgrade removal because you're actually playing 3 upgrades, it still gets hit just as hard by like hard removal on your units. I wanted to highlight this because I do think there's like some fringe situations where something like this could be useful. But yeah, not every card I'm going to talk about here is like an all-star. There's just some nifty interactions and cards that I kind of want to highlight. Secretive Sage here, I think, is going to be an incredibly important card. This is a 2-cost vigilance, just neutral vigilance, 2/2 force unit with shielded. This is Crafty Smuggler for blue, but very importantly has the force trait, which is going to really help bolster up that 2-drop curve slot for all the decks that are trying to enable the force token early in the game. This fills a lot of gaps. I've already been like kind of having some theory crafted decks throughout spoiler season, and all these blue decks that were playing with force, or most of them, this card is just like replacing another 2-drop that was in that deck. Like, this is going to be, I think, really important to make these curves actually work. Something that I was having some concerns about whether or not they would be able to, and just a really solid unit. Not flashy, but very solid. Axe Woves is a 3-cost neutral vigilance, 2/2 shielded, has +1/+1 for each upgrade on him. So mostly just see this as a potential Gar Saxon card because this actually comes in as a 4/3 when you play it with Gar. And of course, then if you start putting other upgrades like Hotshot Blaster on this, it can get out of hand pretty quickly. Just a solid like unit to play with Gar. And actually, the unit we just saw, the 2/2 force unit, another one, right? I didn't even mention that, but the shielded Crafty Smuggler, even without force mattering, is just another really good unit to play with Gar Saxon. So these two are pretty nice buffs to that leader. Whirlwind of Power is a 3-cost vigilance event that gives -2/-2 for this phase to a unit. If you control a force unit, though, it gives -3/-3. So we've seen variations of this card, like Make an Opening, which is -2/-2 and Heal 2. We've seen Perilous Position, which is an upgrade, so it's a permanent debuff. Mystic Reflection can do it if you have a force unit in play. What it does nice is that even the floor is like Make an Opening-esque, but then like you get a higher ceiling with the force unit of -3/-3. I don't know if it'll be better than like Perilous Position, which is already a card that has like not seen a ton of play anymore. But if that 3/3 threshold becomes important, certainly look at this becoming an option. Eighth Brother is, interesting. He's a 5/7 ambush for 6 in command villainy. So that's Darth Vader's stats. Of course, he's not doing Darth Vader's effect, but he says when you play another unit, you may use the Force. If you do, give a unit +2/+2 for this phase. Not a hugely impactful ability. I think just the fact that it's a pretty beefy ambusher will definitely raise the floor a bit on this unit. Not incredible, but solid. Craving Power, which I had mentioned earlier with Kylo, when I talked about the Kylo leader, this is Overwhelming Barrage at home. This is a 5-cost command villainy upgrade that gives +2/+2. And then it says when played, deal damage to an enemy unit equal to the attached unit's power. So it does do the Overwhelming Barrage thing, but it can't spread the damage. It just does it all to one unit. It's kind of just as situational as Barrage because they both require a unit to target with this. This can go on vehicles. It doesn't have that restriction. So just a solid card. Like, certainly I think when Overwhelming Barrage rotates out of Constructed, this can definitely be a card that will see more play. Whether or not it will see play in addition to Overwhelming Barrage will really depend on how many, like, 5-cost clunky removal-y effects. Like, I know Overall barrage, like I just called it clunky, but in reality, like having too many effects like that where that require a unit in play to have the removal go off can start becoming clunky. And this is definitely not better than barrage, so I don't know if it fits in. Maybe as like the fourth pseudo copy of it, it could. And then like with Kylo, it's a pretty interesting synergy with him where you can just flip Kylo, equip this from your discard, and deal 7 to something would be pretty cool. But it's a solid card for sure. Lor San is a 2-cost heroism command unit. It's a 3/2. When defeated, you may give an experience token to a unique unit. What mostly sets this back is the fact that it only has the resistance trait, so it doesn't have that much in the relevant trait department. I don't love 3/2 stat line in a world where we're seeing a bunch of 2/4s and like 2/2 shielded units, but it does have a pretty neat effect. Just wanted to highlight this as like sort of an option in that 2-drop slot for like decks that are not looking for specific synergies with their units. Outer Rim Mystic, a vanilla 3-cost 2/6 force unit. You know, I mentioned that you need to fill out your force curve, and this can kind of do it. And like with Han 2, for instance, where if you're going to play him with green, there's actually not a ton of early force units you can run, but all of a sudden you can just play this on turn 1 as a 2/4 force, and that's without even any effect is kind of okay. It's like Gungi. Would be a 2/5. This would be a 2/4, so it's not as good, obviously, but it kind of fits a slot. Just fills your curve with force units that are sturdy, right? High health makes this kind of important because it's going to be likely that it can help you generate a force token. All right, next is Rey, aggression, heroism unit. Aggression, heroism. It's a 5/5 for 5, so that part, not good. Like, that's not why we're running this. We're running this for the text. It says when you draw this card during the action phase, so the action phase, notably, not like the regroup phase where you actually draw the 2 cards for the turn. This is only if you draw a card through some card effect during your turn. It says if you control a red leader or base, you may reveal this card from your hand if you do deal 2 damage to a unit and 2 damage to a base. So it's free if you draw it in your action phase to deal 2 to unit 2 to a base. And that's obviously very powerful. A free effect, right? It's not, you don't even have to discard the card. You just have to reveal it. The problem, of course, is that there's kind of no way to actually set this up. It's mostly just YOLO. Like, you play a card that draws a card. Maybe like you play the Yoda leader and he draws a card. And maybe it's Rey and you get to deal 2. With Yoda, then I guess you could put Rey on top, and then if you had like another draw effect, then you actually can kind of game this a little bit. Like Ki-Adi-Mundi draws 2 cards. Like, there are ways to draw cards for sure in a deck. The problem is that the card itself is useless when you draw it normally. This is not really a card you're ever going to want to play just as a unit. 5 cost, 5/5 is not good. So, you just kind of hope to free roll it, and with enough card draw in your deck, and with like, I think you probably need to skew aggro, and like this is like free burn towards your opponent's base being the relevant part here, then maybe you can try to fit this in, but it is kind of a dead card most of the time, so I don't know if it's really gonna make its mark yet, at least. Paz Vizsla is a double aggression 5 cost 3/6. Unit gets +2/+0 for each damage on him. So he's like ultra grit. Instead of 1 power for each damage, it's 2. This works with Grand Inquisitor, right? Grand Inquisitor can ready this, and then this can hit for 7. That's pretty cool. Twice the Pride, the double red upgrade, you could put it on this. It would actually give 8 power because it gives +4/+0 and deals 2 damage to the guy. But it is, of course, an incredibly slow card because it's a 5 cost 3/6 that you just kind of, that does nothing. It's probably too cute, but it's like kind of OTK. It has like vibes of like an OTK combo on it. DRK Probe Droid is just a 2 cost aggression 2/3. It says when played, you may defeat a non-unique upgrade. I think this, like, if we see a lot of those, then this becomes like a decent substitute to something like the Sabling Fang Fighter, who can hit unique upgrades. This can't, but it's cheaper and like more cost efficient, right? Jedi in Hiding is a really interesting card. This is a 3 cost 3/3 hidden force Jedi. in aggression, and it says when defeated, you may use the force if you do. Each opponent discards a card from their hand. So first of all, force hidden 3-drop means, again, like similar to the Grand Inquisitor, who obviously has better stats, will often be able to generate you a force token, and then this has the when defeated effect, of course, that when it dies, you can make your opponent discard a card. I think this also works well in conjunction with Force Throw because of the redundancy in discard, and that's actually something villains have had a harder time doing than heroes, where heroes get to play, like, you know, you can play K2SO, you can play all the yellow heroic discard cards, but now you can get some incidental discard in your villainous force decks, and now buff up that Force Throw potentially in that kind of archetype. This card seems solid. It's also something you can play on turn 1 in Han 2. If you're playing, like, especially if you're going first, that's actually really, really powerful. You play this, it's hidden. Then you get to attack with it first action next turn, and then if they kill it, they lose a card, and that's pretty good. So overall, I think this is like a solid card. Like it's certainly could fit into a lot of curves right now, especially again when you're trying to enable force synergies. Quinlan Voss, 4-cost 4/5, Force Jedi, says on attack, if this has 6 or more power, you may deal 2 damage to an enemy base. So the main place you're looking to do something with him is with yellow, where you get to play things like Surprise Strike and Hot Shot Blaster and get an extra 2 damage. Now, his floor is fine, like a 4/5. If you're not like pumping him, he's just a 4/5 for 4. That hasn't really been good enough. There's been like one of those cards that, like as a pseudo like vanilla, and that's Kanan. He's seen a decent amount of play. He's a 4/5 for 4 that like sometimes heals. But you do get a decent amount of upside out of this guy if you do work with pumps. You can look at even playing this in the Quinlan Leader, where he was already running all these pumps, and you can maybe get a more aggressive spin on the deck. You can play this with Third Sister, where you can play Quinlan hidden, and then like basically guarantee that next turn you can like Hot Shot Blaster him. You can play this in like Talzin or Red or something, and play some upgrades potentially, right? But I think mostly if you're gonna play this, you're gonna want yellow in the deck, because that's the cleanest way to enable this is Hot Shot Blaster. It's the best way to enable it too. And then Surprise Strike, of course, and a lot of other pumps that exist are in yellow. So he's a cool card, and interesting to see if he'll fit into like making some of these red yellow hero decks like faster and easier to close games with. And then the card that was revealed alongside Quinlan and does synergize with him is Asajj. It's a 5-cost 5/6 that says when played and on attack, give another friendly force unit +2/+0. At least it is a 5-cost that has a when played, which is important, because like if this was just an on attack, this would be useless. The fact that it can buff a unit the turn you play it, now kind of it creates a pseudo bigger threat on the board, while also presenting kind of a problem for the next turn in the unit itself, right? When this goes off, it's sort of it's like not as good as like a Poe Dameron attacking, but it's like got a little bit of that vibe going on, where like you get a big attack off and then like you pump something. There's Force Leaders aplenty in this set. I mentioned Mother Talzin already. That's something you can look at to play with Asajj, where you just like flip Talzin, play Asajj, buff your Talzin. There's probably other force units in the deck as well, right? So Asajj is interesting. It's a little slow. I don't know if this is going to be quite good enough, because I think at 5, sometimes we just need something even better and even bigger and even more impactful than like a +2 to something. But it's still something. It's still relevant. This isn't nothing. Lightsaber Throw is an interesting card. It's a 2-cost aggression event. It says discard a lightsaber from your hand. If you do, deal 4 damage to a ground unit and draw a card. So you get your card back, and you get like a 1-cost discount on a open fire, essentially. You know, if you're playing a bunch of lightsabers, being able to do this on turn 1 is interesting, because there might be a lot of 4 health units running around on turn 1. So like in a control deck that like plays a decent amount of lightsabers, that might be interesting. Maybe with the Kylo Leader that is going to be playing a lot of upgrades, you can kind of free roll this card if you're playing with red. It's nifty. It's not like crazy good, but I could see some utility. All right, BD1 is a 1-cost 1/3 hidden droid in Cunning Heroism. Says when played, choose another friendly unit. While this is in play, that unit gets +1/+0 in Saboteur. So it's like Huyang Light, right? It's a unit that buffs another unit. Of course, it being hidden means it's going to be difficult to like turn off the +1/+0 the turn you play BD1. So it's an interesting 1-drop. It's a lot, like, remember, this is just cost 1, so there's a lot going for it in terms of like how much it's giving you for 1 resource. The downside of 1-drops is that like you're still, no matter how cheap they are, they still cost you a card to play them, and they're not like hugely impactful pieces of cardboard. So too many of them and you kind of just like your deck is just filled with air. But this has like a decent amount of upside for a 1-drop. N1 Starfighter, 2-cost vanilla 3/2 for Heroism Cunning, with no relevant traits, but might fill a curve slot for this color. Babu Frick is an interesting build around. He's another 1-drop. He's a 1/4 Underworld that says Action Exhaust. You may attack with a friendly droid unit, and for the attack, it deals damage equal to its remaining health instead of power. You know, a lot of droids have a lot of health. That's kind of their thing, right? They're like all 1/4s or 1/3, like we saw with BD1. So, like, this guy is not really a unit on his own, but he's like turning your other units into like much bigger threats. I just think he's cool. I don't think droid aggro tribal is like really gonna be a thing, but like maybe. And like he's pretty cool if you're doing that. Trust your instincts. Use the Force. If you do attack with a unit, it gets +2/+0 and deals its damage first. So this is shoot first, but instead of giving +1/+0, it's +2/+0 while using the Force token. In a Force deck that would have wanted shoot first, this is pretty good. Like +2 is a lot. Like your 3-power units can kill 5 health units without taking any damage back. Like this is going to create like pretty cool breakpoints if you're able to enable it. I think this card is solid for sure in a Force deck. Tip the Scale. 2-cost Cunning Event. Look at an opponent's hand and discard a non-unit card from it. It is a trick, by the way, so you can find this with Jabba the Hutt. It's sort of like Jam Communications, but that was a Heroism only card, and that one was only events. This can hit upgrades as well. I think I mostly wanted to highlight this because we're getting a villain is getting some more options in terms of like discard, which is something it didn't really have a lot of coming into this set. I don't think you'll likely run this over like Jam Communications or Spark of Rebellion in a Heroism Cunning deck, but villain can't do that, and villain might use this as an option to rip out some important events and stuff from its opponent's hand. And that was the last one. So hope I got through enough of the cards for you. There's of course a lot more that I didn't talk about here. They range from mostly draft stock and like maybe some very niche utility cards. But, you know, feel free to shout out any that you think are exciting for you. Over the next few weeks, I'll be getting more testing done. I'll do like a full leader breakdown and tier list. I'll probably go through all the legendaries. I'll go through what I think are the best cards in the set. And so we got a lot of kind of planned videos in the works. But yeah, let me know what you think. Hit that subscribe button. Check out the Patreon. And until next time, take care.